Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. So in this video, it is kind of my grand finale with my lupus journey. Today I'm going to be talking about my journey of lupus nephritis and into remission because they actually happened surprisingly close together. Just so you know, this is going to be my weirdest of all my videos so far. There are a lot of things that happen that I am not able to explain. There's going to be a lot of spirituality in it, a lot of mindset stuff. Without further ado, I'm going to dive right in. So I believe where I left you in my previous video was I had just started Benlysta. My joint pain was getting better. I had a little bit more energy. I felt like there were a lot of things that were getting better. However, I was still very clearly a lupus patient. I used to have, it was like welts under the skin in my face, and I would get these really swollen patches just randomly, probably having to do with stress or something random I ate that was part of my diet that I hadn't picked out yet was an issue. But more often than not, it was just nothing at all. It was just part of lupus. I was happy with the Benlysta though, and I had a better quality of life than I had had in previous years. So I went to an appointment with my rheumatologist in December of 2018. She was very happy with my progress. I was very happy with my progress. My quality of life was still pretty shitty. However, it looked like that was the best that I could get to. She encouraged me by saying a lot of her patients didn't even get to that level of quality of life, so it was very good that I was there. I walked out of that appointment pretty pleased. It was good news, and I hadn't gotten good news in a long time. She was happy with my progress. I was happy with my progress. I had gone to the doctor by myself, and my ex-husband had stayed home to play with our son. I got home, I was playing with our baby. Everything seemed pretty normal. We had a trajectory, you know, I was stable. I was gonna stay stable. I got a call from my rheumatologist. It was her on the phone and not the nurse. And she told me that my most recent blood work looked fine. It wasn't great, but it was fine. However, my kidney numbers were not in the place where I should be. She said she was gonna put in a referral to a nephrologist. She said it might be nothing, you know, I wasn't experiencing any of the lupus nephritis outward symptoms, so she just wanted to double check. She just wanted to be sure. She gave me a referral to a nephrologist. Took me about a month to get in. My nephrologist was this great dry guy that was just very matter of fact about everything, which personally, that's what I want in a specialist doctor. I don't want that's like someone who's all warm and fuzzy and will talk to you about your dog and all that. I want somebody that knows the illness very well and will get you out of there quickly. So he told me that my numbers weren't great, but the only way to know was to go ahead and have a biopsy. So we had to schedule that and wait for that. February 2018, I had a biopsy of my kidney. I still have a little scar. The gentleman who gave me the biopsy said almost in passing, if it's good news, they'll just call you. And if it's bad news, they'll probably have you come into the office. After I had recovered from the biopsy, a few days later, I was outside playing with my son. We were taking pictures. It was a beautiful day, which is pretty rare for February in Indiana. However, it was warm enough to take the baby out, and we were just having a good time. I got a call from my nephrologist's office asking me to come in for an appointment. It was a Thursday and she couldn't get me in until a Tuesday. So I had that time to think about what the bad news could be. At this point, I was so tired. I was so physically and emotionally exhausted from trying new medications, from getting semi-good news, not great news, but semi-good news, and then really terrible news. I was done. I felt like giving up. I was depressed, and I felt like I had a reason to be depressed, and I had this right to be absolutely miserable. And I was absolutely miserable. Well, for the previous year, I've always been interested in astrology. I had been getting into more of tarot. And so I had followed some Instagram accounts that would talk about tarot sometimes so that I could get more of an education. I was following this one psychic medium. Her name is Stephanie with Divine Soul Journey. Follow her. She is absolutely amazing. In later years, I had the privilege of taking a few of her courses, and she is absolutely amazing. Anyway, Anyway, sometimes she gets on Instagram and she does these lives where she'll pull you a tarot card or some kind of oracle card, and she will say just anything that she feels coming off of your energy. This woman pulled me a tarot card. I don't remember what tarot card it was. However, she said, I feel a lot of rumination with you, which is where you just think the same negative thought over and over again, which, I mean, guilty. She said, I feel a lot of rumination with you, and I really feel like you are needlessly depressed. And I was very taken aback because that was rude. I had every need to be depressed right now. But she said one phrase that I think about to this day, and it was, shift your perspective and know that this is an opportunity for you to become the strongest version of yourself. In that moment, it was the last thing that I wanted to hear. I was so exhausted. I had zero hope left. I was just tired and done. I wanted more bad news. I was to the point where I was afraid of any good news because it just prolonged the inevitable. And she said that phrase, this is the opportunity for you to become the strongest version of yourself. I went to bed livid. I was so mad. I was just like, how dare she? She doesn't know me. She doesn't know my story. And I was thinking thoughts like, if she knew I'm walking into like a death sentence, she never would have said that to me. You know, just like really, negative thinking. I woke up the next morning. It was kind of like all I needed was that night's sleep for me to kind of have that sink in. And it was like I had pressed pause on my depression. It was still there. It was like, I'm going to take this one step at a time, and I am going to be the strongest version of myself. I drove to my doctor's appointment by myself. My ex-husband stayed home with my kid. I was about a half an hour early. You remember a lot of details about the day you are first told that you're not gonna make it. I wore my winged tip shoes, got at Goodwill. I loved them. My ex-husband hated them. However, I felt like fire. I sat in the parking lot and wrote an essay about the Tower, which is a tarot card that I was definitely identifying with at the time. In traditional tarot, it represents the stage of life where there are big changes coming, inevitable changes that are coming. The card is of this big tower that is being struck by lightning, and people are jumping out of the building. And it's one of those things where it's almost like the mother bird making the nest uncomfortable so that the baby has to learn how to fly. The tower is getting struck by lightning, so you can stay where you are. However, it will not be what you have always known, or you can get out and get something new. That was what I wrote about, just receiving bad news and how it was like being in the tower. I walked into that appointment alone, and the doctor walked in shortly after me. He told me that I had stage 3 and stage 5 kidney disease. There was no way to cure it. The only thing we could do was prolong the inevitable: kidney transplant, dialysis, possibly death. He was very uncomfortable with my numbers, and he told me that I needed to be on high dose steroids immediately. I hadn't cried up until that point, and that was when I started to cry because that was something I was not going to do. If you've seen my previous videos, I talk about my psychosis with high-dose prednisone and dexamethasone. I told him that I would live a shorter life, but I was not going to lose my mind again. His bedside manner was not the best. He basically told me that that was my only option, and I was literally choosing a shorter life if I chose to not take the high-dose steroids. He told me that he would put his head together with my rheumatologist and they would come up with something. However, his current plan of action was not something that I was willing to participate in. He didn't give me a time frame for how long I would last, or he made it clear that it would not be very long. I drove home kind of in shock. Once I pulled into my driveway, I sat there for a while thinking about those words. This is the opportunity for you to become the strongest version of yourself. I started seeing my life. I started seeing it end. I sat in the car for about 20 minutes preparing myself for that and deciding that if I had 1 year left, if I had 5 years left, I was going to make it the best year of my life. So when I walked in the door and I took my baby from my ex-husband, I told him that it was stage 3 and stage 5. It wasn't looking good. There was really nothing that they could give me for it because I wasn't going to take the high-dose steroids, and we were just gonna see. And I was okay. I knew what I had to do. The rest was up to God and the universe, but what I had to do was make sure that my remaining time was good. I started a blog, which was something that I had always wanted to do. I think it's still up. I don't know. I haven't added to it in a while. Things got busy. I wrote a lot about death, both in my journal and on my blog, where I was just talking about the absurdity of death and what it means for us and why we focus on it so much and stuff like that. At some point, it became time for me to tell my parents and the people I was closest to. It's one of the hardest things I ever had to do. I didn't tell anybody to their face. I definitely sent it in messages or emails. I couldn't take the backlash of that. Not the emotional anything. I was barely keeping myself together, and so I definitely had to pass along the information where none of their reaction came back on me. I felt really ready. I felt ready for anything. I felt ready to die. I did that life scan where you look back at everything you regret and you decide that you're okay with that and you can live with those. My life shifted into crystal clear perspective. I knew what I wanted, I knew what I didn't want, and I knew that even if I had a year left, I was going to make sure that it was good and I wasn't going to roll over anymore. My doctors did put their head together, my nephrologist and my rheumatologist, and they developed this plan to give me losartan, which is a blood pressure medication. I had always had low blood pressure, so they were a little bit nervous giving that to me. I did experience side effects at first, and I still do sometimes, but it was to protect my kidneys from the worsening disease that was hitting them. They put me on high-dose Cellcept, which is actually an organ rejection medication, which also helped lower my immune system and protect my kidneys from the disease. And they put me on very low-dose methylprednisolone, which was actually a steroid that I had tolerated in the past. Low-dose steroids, blood pressure medication, and high-dose Cellcept. However, the medications that I was taking were just kind of part of the background. It was like I had this purpose now to make my life good. I looked at my relationship and it was really bad. So I worked with my therapist and we started working on my life. It was like everything that was going on in my life, just making sure that I had firm boundaries and I wasn't rolling over for how people decided to treat me. I was going to treat myself the best, and anybody else who did not treat me like I was treating me could go by the wayside. I started standing up for myself in my marriage. I stood my ground and my expectations were clear. I continued my physical therapy exercises. I played with, took pictures of, and enjoyed my baby so much. I took a transcendental meditation class, actually went through the education process and the path to get my mantra, which I still have and I still use. I meditated and I journaled every single day. I had another appointment. It was a couple months after starting my medications, and so they were looking for any kind of improvement, any kind of indication that it was helping. My numbers were even worse than what they were before I had started. But at that point, it was like I was so focused in on what I wanted my life to look like, even if it was ending, that the information didn't matter. It was like it wasn't happening to me. It was like my life wasn't physical anymore. It was spiritual. And all of these things that were going on were just things that were happening to me, that were given to me as opportunities to actually use the things that I had learned and actually get to a place where it didn't matter what happened to me. I was still gonna live my best life regardless. None of it really felt real. Around the same time, people started praying for me. A lot of people started praying for me. I started meeting people that seemed like they were supposed to be in my life at the time. I met this one dear friend who we still email back and forth. She gave me this copper coil and she told me to put it next to my bed, and she prayed that it would heal me. I don't know how much it did, however, I put it next to my bed. Anyone who asked if they could lay hands on me and pray for me, I said yes, because I was just being led through this process and I didn't know where it was gonna end. My mom's church prayed for me at the time. There were people everywhere that were chipping in and sending me so many good healing vibes and prayers and energies. Music has always been something that is very personal to me, and there were years where my ex-husband and I didn't share the same taste in music, so I would just never listen to music that I liked. I got back into music. I really started enjoying myself. I appreciated every smell and every piece of sunshine that came my way. The cold grass on my feet in the mornings, the very decaffeinated coffee in my cup. I had my first Reiki, which is energy healing, and that was a really beautiful experience for me. I actually still get distance Reiki from a friend of mine. Every day, I didn't know what was going to happen. I just knew that I was going to be extremely present for my life, however long that was. I had my next appointment. My nephrologist kind of scratched his head, looked at the computer. It didn't make sense. He looked back at me and he said, "Well, your numbers look great." I had started improving so rapidly that he thought it was probably a mistake or maybe just a bump in my results for some reason. So he ordered tests for 4 weeks from then. When those tests came back, I had improved even more. And it was the type of thing where I was so focused on my life, how I was living my life inside my head and out, that I didn't even notice how much energy I had now and how good I felt and how my joints barely hurt at all anymore. It was like I was fighting any kind of negativity that was coming in at me. During this whole time, I had stuck to my relationship expectations, and my husband at the time decided that that was not something that he was willing to give me. And so we proceeded with a divorce. Even that was like something I was being moved through. It was almost like I was in this dreamy state where it was like, what's gonna happen to me next? And it was like all these things were coming at me. I was just taking them and just observing them. I had almost a separation between my life and myself. By my next appointment, it was in late July 2019, my numbers had improved so much that I was classified as being in remission. By the following appointment, in September, my numbers had gone down to 0. I was able to get off the low-dose steroids. I was able to come down on the Cellcept. My doctors really weren't sure what had changed. They weren't sure how this crazy, off-the-wall, almost experimental treatment had worked so well with me. I knew that I was living my life in a completely different way than I had all of my previous years. I was living intentionally. I was living for me. I wasn't going to settle for anything that wasn't good. In the following months, my rheumatologist had actually found this doctor that was studying high-dose Cellcept and low-dose steroids as an alternative to treat lupus nephritis, and she was actually finding some good success. However, it was not an approved way of treating anybody, and so she didn't have a lot of participants in the study or a lot of cases to go on. My rheumatologist actually sent her my records to look at them, and the reason for low-dose steroids in this trial was that high-dose steroids can have very lasting effects on the body. And so if you are going to go the low steroid route, it can actually add years to your life at the end. So in the course of that year, I had been told I was going to die. I had lost my marriage. I had to start a job. I had to start working in the first time since I had gotten out of school years before. Because my symptoms had been so severe, I wasn't able to work. I started my life as a single mom, but it was like both the physical side and the spiritual side of my life had joined. And it was like anything bad that happened to me at that moment or in those months, it was like it was for me. It wasn't happening to me. It was something that I could actually step up on and something that I was excited to conquer or to see how it would change me or the situation. It was kind of that moment in your life where you're standing there and everything else has been stripped away from you and it's just you and God and the universe, and it's just this now what moment. It was really exhilarating. It was scary and I cried a lot, and it was happy and I was excited, but mostly it was this stepping out onto this cloud of faith, knowing that if I fell for a reason, and if I landed, that was meant to be as well. I started planning who I wanted to be, what kind of mom I wanted to be, what kind of job I wanted to have, what kind of life I wanted to live, where I wanted to live. It was one of the most exciting times in my life because it was like I had been given this golden ticket and it was a life. It was a fresh start and I was allowed to do whatever I wanted with it. My son was just a few months old when we decided to have a divorce. And recently I had professional pictures done of he and I on his 3rd birthday. And I had this real epiphany moment where I had been working so hard for so long to reach all my goals and to have the life that I really wanted. And I saw myself and my son in these pictures. I had this moment where I was like, there she is. That's who I wanted to be my entire life. I just didn't give myself permission to actually be the version of myself that I wanted to be. And it was where I was so thankful for all the times that I had been stripped down emotionally and just absolutely cracked wide open to all the pain and suffering that had happened in my life, because it allowed me to be that woman that I now was. And I was exactly who I wanted to be. So everybody, this is probably the longest video I've ever made. And if you've stuck around this far, thank you so much. Thank you for following along. I'm not gonna stop making lupus videos, but this is the end of my actual story. This is as far as I'm gonna tell. So thank you so much for following along. I hope this helps you find the version of yourself that you want to be, and I hope it helps you realize that you have unlimited potential and you have all the resources you need already available to you. Thank you guys so much. Love you to pieces. I'll talk to you later.